Good evening. Welcome to Paranormal Experienced with Kat Hobson. I'm Kat, your host, and I am on the road. So there's going to be spring break background behind me. There's going to be all kinds of yipping and yelling, maybe, and not just because of the scariness of tonight's show. You know, it is so very rare that I share paranormal locations. Usually I am on here chatting y'all up, chatting at some of the most wonderful guests. They're so awesome. But I just felt like I was not maybe going to be able to talk the whole 2 hours. I am having some allergy issues and my Zyrtec is losing the game. But it's all fun, right? Because I'm going to just enjoy having all of y'all here. And I think that y'all are going to have fun too. I am in Gulf Shores, Alabama at this moment, and I love here. It is beautiful. It is historic. We have so many locations in the area to play. Y'all may have heard about a shooting at the Hangout this week. That's the first time I have ever heard of anything like that happening here. This is even with the breakers, a fairly well-behaved town, because people have grown up coming here. Y'all know the place, right? No matter where you live, there's the spot where it's your town. It's your holiday. You grow up going with your families. You wind up coming back with your friends as you mature into a person that they're foolish enough to let have the car and the credit card and go to the beach. But it's really a great place, because once you run through those phases of your life, you're bringing your kids. I came here with my parents several times in my life. I came on my honeymoon with David when we were first married. Most of those places are gone because hurricanes have cleaned the slate several times. But the Hangout came back. And I'm going to give a shout out to a gentleman named Shaul, who has done a beautiful job of keeping most of his structures low so you can see the water, you can get to the water. There are a lot of public beaches here with paved parking. It's just a wonderful retreat. And I can't tell you enough about just how comfortable it is. This is a safe place. And I'm so thrilled to be able to share some of that with y'all through the live feeds, through whatever photos I do. It's just a lot of fun. And I think that it's history and other things kind of are on the peripheral of all of the crowds. Things happen here. I did my very first paranormal training at Fort Morgan, which is an old Civil War fort. It was utilized again during the World Wars. It was manned again during those wars. When I very first saw what was going on, I couldn't believe it. I know y'all have seen it recently. It's been discovered. But Adam Berry is from Alabama as well. And he and Amy did an investigation there. And Josh Gates had one of his teams there recently. And both of the shows did a fairly good job, right? Because some of the things that you have to take into consideration is that Fort Morgan is an open place. There are no, ways to keep the sound down. There are no ways to prevent any kind of contamination. There are snakes and bats and frogs and lizards and other things. But I personally would not walk across that moat without gaiters on my legs because of the swamps, the swampiness, and the snakes. But it's really cool because while I wasn't there when this happened, a friend of mine, she actually owned the gallery that I was a featured artist in, was thrown in Fort Morgan. Picked up and thrown, not shoved. So while she was a small woman, I don't care how small you are. That's something else, right? How often does that happen? But I am really impressed because when Josh Gates' team went in, they were using technology out the yin-yang, had all kinds of thermal imaging going on, and they caught something. You know and I know that doesn't always happen, right? It's certainly not on demand. I cannot imagine the frustration of being a producer of these shows and knowing that you've got to get something. Something's going to have to hit, or there goes all that money, right? I hope you will excuse my throat there. But it is a very interesting place. I have recordings of footsteps. I have video recordings of people. And could that be a person? Nope. It is completely clear. Clear as in you can see through it, but also clear as in there you go. But I think that one of the things that strikes me the most is that nobody seems to act like it's a big deal. Well, I'm here to tell you it's a big deal. When you hear stories, not from one, not from two, but a lot of good friends, and you wonder, how in the world did this happen that Amy and Adam are getting information. Josh and his people are. Then, I had such an experience. And, I didn't see anybody outside of the fort while they were doing their investigation. When I did mine, the very first time, I had never used a K2. I was not really sure what to do, but I just, I had just set it down and left it alone, and I was in an area with, if they had any power, it was very limited, and it was just really, it was so exciting, right? Because I'm sitting there with two other people, and one of them is the founder of Gulf Paranormal. His name is Todd. Great investigator. We're a little bit clashy because we're both strong personalities, but he is a brilliant investigator. And then the conversation that I was having went on for so long that he was like, well, we're going to go over to the car, and we'll be there when you get done, because the K2 would not stop. And it was responding intelligently with no power around us. when we first came in, there were some people that were, not people, but there were some images that were all over. And I swear to goodness, it was my first time that I ever heard or paid attention to, I guess, a disembodied voice. Yeah. And it was so funny because it was, Todd had walked in, I walked in, and the other gentleman walked in. And it was like, get out. And y'all did that. Come on. You know you did that. What are you doing trying to speak the new girl? Come on. And Todd was just like, no. And I'm going to tell you, he is a big, burly, Minnesotan, I believe. Also one of the most gifted artists I've ever seen. You can find him on Gulf Paranormal, but you can also find him. He is the Crayon Man. And that's right. He uses crayons as his medium. And he is flippin' spectacular. They look like oils. And, like I said, we had an issue on who evidence belonged to. And so that was the only reason that we don't investigate together anymore. Excuse me. If I'm bringing equipment to, I'm sorry guys, but if I'm bringing equipment to a hunt, then that's my evidence. And I don't mind if you want a copy of it. I'll give you that because we did that investigation together. But never let someone take your evidence. Just putting that out there. Gifted artist, great investigator, different ideas. And that's all that is. But I just thought that if you're going to go and try to do your first investigation, find someone who knows what they're doing. This is not a playtime. Or it shouldn't be. Because if you're going to get activity, you're going to get it from people who have lived. There's a reason they're there. You don't always know what it is. You're not going to ever know what it is unless they choose to tell you. Okay? And that's their choice. And I used to have on my business cards, the earth makes music for those who will listen. Well, spirits do too. Spirits make conversation as long as you listen to them. Sometimes if you're gifted, then you can get that from them individually, just interaction. I don't think as many people are necessarily gifted as claim that they are, and for those that I might have offended with that, it's okay. We'll both get past that. But I do think that there's a difference between a psychic who knows the future, a medium who can communicate with the dead, and a sensitive who sometimes moves into both of those realms. But it's just, it's a gift. If you get an EVP and it's a real EVP, then you're batting 1,000. If you get interaction, people blow off orbs. And a lot of times they're right. A lot of times they're wrong. Because you know what? None of us have crossed that barrier. I would say none of us have crossed that barrier long enough to know for sure how our spirits can interact. The majority of the time, people I've spoken with are trying to get a handle on the fact that they're not in their body anymore. A lot of people have blackness. A lot of people, see the writings and stuff that the medical personnel put up on top of cabinets, or, talk about something that their nurses were doing to or around them. Things like that. But when you first cross, I feel like you are acclimating and processing like mad. Because, well, this is new. Why am I here? What the hell just happened? Oh my gosh, this is freaky. There's a lot of, there has to be a lot going on. Because while everybody talks about going peacefully into that deep sleep, or, whatever you want to put in there, I think it has to blow your mind. If you are cognitive at all of what is happening around you, you have to be tripping. I had an experience where I had a placenta abruptio and was hemorrhaging. And the pediatrician had her child in the OR. And that's the last thing I saw or knew of, or however, was that there was a child in that operating room. And what the hell? So, it was definitely a freaky thing for me, because I don't remember seeing that child when I was conscious. I do remember seeing the pediatrician because her hair was wet. Everybody there had come from a shower because it was 4 a.m. And they were trying to save me. And him. So, it is what it is. I guess I was looking at my surroundings, but I didn't give a rat's butt about anything else. I wasn't interested in learning how I might flee from, to the ether, or interact with it, or, what? Just not even sure. But I don't know what happened after that. I know that I had transfusions. That was when AIDS was a thing, and people were terrified of that. Everything I had been tested, and I had to approve it. And I woke up with sister-in-laws at the end of my bed staring at me and saying, I've never literally seen someone that looked whiter than their sheet. Well, they did that day. Meanwhile, I was appreciative of all that, positivity. Oh my God, you look horrid. But, and there was a lot of trauma after that and stuff. I mean, you don't get right when you have an experience like that for some time. And if you don't know how to process it, it takes longer. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. The whole experience probably lasted an hour, maybe. But I really don't remember anything other than seeing the people in the operating room and the child in the operating room. So it's just one of those things. I envy those that can bring messages back with them. I don't feel like that was an option that was given to me, maybe because I wasn't supposed to go. I don't know. But anyway, I digress. We're going to take a break. Well, actually, we're not, because I'm running this on a device that does not have my recordings. So, there you go. You're stuck with me. And my handy-dandy Coca-Cola, so that if my voice gets too bad. But, do y'all want to hear some haunted locations? There's some pretty neat ones. There's some that are just kind of like, oh, please. I know you're not expecting me to tell these people that, but there's something to all of them, right? And I will I know a lot of y'all have heard me talk about Pensacola Lighthouse. I'm going to save that for closer to the end. But I think that every place where people have experiences has energy left behind. And if it's been a traumatic experience, well, then there's going to be more of you left there. You know, a case in point would be the Barton Academy here in Mobile. So here in Mobile, it's about 30-40 minutes away. But it's the Barton Academy. It is a beautiful structure. It was, during the Civil War, a Union hospital. And I did not know that the Union Army had taken Mobile at any point. But apparently they were there because they used it as a field, as a hospital. And also they had Confederate prisoners of war. The story is that they were hung in the basement when they needed to be hung. Or I guess when they decided it was time to hang them. Nothing like getting fixed and then being put out of it, right? But the Confederates were hung in the basement. The people that were damaged there, and this was back in the days before a lot was known about, well, hygiene or any kind of pain relief, really. I mean, we're talking Gettysburg kind of battles, but at sea for the most part. And the energy from the people that survived as well as died is going to be there, because don't think that just because we didn't die that we're not putting out the vibe like mad when we get upset, frightened, angry. Can you imagine all three at one time? This happened to all of us. But the most fascinating part is that we leave a signature. That's right. If you're familiar with the term stone tape theory, that is where you have sentries or people who are waiting on loved ones to come home. Picture the women up on the widow walks in the Boston Harbor and stuff. Fishing wives, fishing families who don't know why that ship hasn't come back yet. There's all kinds of things that create angst. There's all kinds of illnesses that don't kill you but leave a mark on you. Injuries too. And all of that, the theory is, can be captured by the area. You've heard particularly limestone is a good conductor for that kind of energy. Why do you think people go to dams and old structures and things built with that? Or cliffs built with that? There's so many things that can affect the environment. And a lot of them stem from us. That's why when someone starts talking about residual hauntings, that's what you're looking at. And they are all over the place. So it stands to reason that this old structure would hold on to some of that angst, that terror, that pain, that, oh my God, there's a noose around my neck. Please don't kick that. Oh, done. Right? So while not everything is intelligent, it had some stuff behind it for it to be there. So next time you're somewhere and you're getting the footsteps walking across the path over and over, and you go back and you get the footsteps walking across the path over and over, Don't blow that off. Somebody had something serious happen or serious attachment emotionally to that area for you to be getting that. There's so much that goes into this, right? But I never blow off residual hauntings. And sometimes when I'm having particularly sensitive moments, I feel like I can communicate with them, but as a rule, you can't. Because whatever is there is stuck on repeat. If it's a sentry, they're still guarding that area. If it's a child playing, running around the yard, same thing. You know, and a case in point would be the LaLaurie Mansion in New Orleans, in the Quad, because there are tales of a child screaming as if she's being beaten. Well, there was a child who was being beaten, who ran across the roof to get away from Madame LaLaurie and plummeted to her death in front of people, which is why Madame LaLaurie had to flee the city. And, you know, the story is that her horses were, you know, attached to her transom, and away she went. There's some bad people in this world, and they leave marks too. But there's good people in this world, and I feel like they do as well. There's always a yin to a yang, right? It's, I'm talking with my hands like you can see me. I apologize that you can't. But I think that the yin and the yang, right? Lori in chat mentioned the Clay County Jail in Florida. Also a lot of residual energy. So when you hear somebody blow off a location because, you know, there's nothing there, it's just residual energy, rethink that and maybe tell them, I think you might be wrong. It's okay. We're always learning. And believe it or not, I have on occasion been wrong. So many times. But, you know, the main thing is just to keep your eyes open and your ears working. Because one of the things that was at Barton Academy, or is at Barton Academy, is the spirit of a young girl who, for whatever reason, jumped to her death. Given the way this information is disseminated, I would think that maybe she didn't jump to her death unless maybe something was after her. Someone was after her. But at any rate, she is still there. People hear her footsteps. They'll see a single orb. And I'm not really sure where I come down on orbs, but I think that if you see an orb, it's possible that it could be a spirit. Because generally, like at Fort Morgan, and I'm sure if people are investigating outside at Barton Academy, that you're going to have more than one. You know, if it's something, an insect or dust motes or whatever, there's going to be more than one. And they're all going to move through the same place at some point. So you should see more than one orb as it's reflecting. And I feel like if you only get one, there's a good possibility that you've got something going on. Don't discount that. You know, I get so surprised maybe. It's not really frustrated because it doesn't have much to do with me. But when I hear people say, oh, well, that's just an orb. Well, yeah, sometimes they can be a non-adventure, right? But there better be more than one. And I have seen orbs in photos taken by my good friend Dave DeLeese. Hello, Dave. Who, he was doing beautiful work in a cemetery on Staten Island. He's from Staten Island. In fact, he and Steve DeShavi lived just down the road from each other. But Dave, in the midst of doing this work, was actually about to be picked up for a show, but he had a terrible stroke. And it was very, very hard for him, very hard on him. And when he came back, he wasn't able to go and do his show or do that kind of thing at that time. But he could go and take the photos. He could go back into the cemetery at the church that he had frequented and start taking some photos again. And the photos that I have seen that he has shared with me have faces. Excuse me, I have to shift a little bit. But they knew him when he came back. It had been some time. Took his camera and went back to his cemetery. And the same faces were in the photographs. They were welcoming him back. And some of them are majestic. They have like Benedictine crosses and just all kinds of symbolism in them. Some of them are people's faces. But they're special. And if you ever run across him, you should ask to see them. Because I bet you he's got some with him. But all of that to say that don't discount what someone is getting. It's okay to be a skeptic. You don't want to have your mind open so far that your brain falls out and runs around. But you do want to be discriminate in what you call paranormal. Because if you just close your mind like a steel trap, you won't have anything but bats in your belfry. Right? So, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. You don't offend. You certainly, as God is my witness, I can attest to this, do not offend a spirit. Been there, done that. Got on a TV show because I was an idiot, right? But it was not so much of an idiocy. They didn't hurt me. They could have. I had to spend the night in that location. But it was just a matter of insensitivity, not paying attention, not realizing what a reaction would come from my bad decision. Sometimes spirits have ways of letting you know they're pissed. This includes moving items. You hear them. I heard cell doors slamming at Shelley's jail up in Paulding, Ohio, the old Paulding jail. It was right in front of me. My computer was being jacked around with. My computer was hardwired. It was not being jacked around with by anything other than the supernatural. And that was disconcerting. A little freaky. Was I ready to go after the initial leave my stuff alone reaction kicked in? Because it did. Yeah, I wasn't ready to go home. I mean, I was there for a purpose. But it was just kind of like I'd never put myself in a position of being the target before. And I make no doubt I was the target. So be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. And, you know, the things you learn as you go. I would have just listened if somebody had told me that, right? But by the same token, I did spend the night in that jail. I have spent several nights since then in that jail. And I plan to spend a few more up there too, as my good friend Lori has her birthday party there. I'm so excited. I get to see all my friends in Ohio. But let's get on, shall we? Because we've got a little time before this. Well, we're not really taking a break. I'll mark it and put one in later. But there is, everybody has the oldest cemetery, right? Just like everybody has a crybaby bridge. Yep, there's one of those in Mobile too, with a mother who hid her daughter or hid her child under a bridge. And that's still, that. But, I found it interesting that in this particular case, it's called the Battle House Hotel. Very historic, very beautiful. And not really something that I have been to yet, although I'm going to fix that. But there's a rumor that a gentleman named Henry Butler is still there, haunting room 522. But there's also, and now I want you to think about this, a newlywed woman, right? How bad did that honeymoon have to be going for her to hang herself from the Crystal Ballroom's chandelier? I mean, I know this was so long ago, right? Did she not realize that there were other parts of marriages besides sitting down to tea? Was she shocked? Was she hurt? Was her husband a brute? Well, no one knows because she killed herself. And I have been hopeless a lot of times in my life. Or maybe not hopeless, but very concerned. But I think that it's really tragic that she didn't try to get help in other ways, or maybe she wasn't from that area. That was where they had gone for the honeymoon, and she didn't have anyone there with her. I just don't know. Lori said, he's a man. They're not all bad. And not all aspects of the honeymooning would be bad either, unless, he really was just a brute and had no consideration, right? This was back in the day. This is not today. But it is a place also that they get a lot of images with people in them. And I think that's really surprising. Although, in the ballroom, of course, I could see that. But as a rule, if you're in that kind of a hotel, you're there for a good time. So, it's just one of those things, I think. But I did want to say that if you get a chance to go to someplace beautiful and historic and just wonderful like that, take some time to walk around. I'm going to be sharing later an image that I was sent by someone who knows what I do, and it's interesting. If I get permission, I will share it on my personal Facebook page, but if not, we'll discuss it next week. But it's a ski lift, or a sky lift, I guess, if there's no snow. I always think that's funny. And as the car behind her is coming down, I see, she didn't tell me anything. She just said, what do you think about this? Or do you see anything? Or that kind of thing. There were two women there were people in that image, and they were obstructing parts of the background, but not fully. So I have not sent that to the people that I want to get opinions on, so I'm not going to go into a whole lot more detail. But, this was in a rural resort, and they just happened to be in separate cars, on the lift, and she just happened to turn around and take the picture, right? So, there you go. You just never know. So, since this would technically be where we would take a break, I'm just going to acknowledge that and say that thank y'all so much for being here. And we're only going to do an hour tonight because I don't think my voice is going to make it past that. But I hope you enjoyed this hour. Let's see. What else? What else can I tell you about? Oh, well, I don't know why this particular place is haunted, but I don't know what happened to create the situation. It's called the Kate Shepherd House, and it was built in 1897. Excuse me. And for whatever reason, there's still a child haunting that location. She runs around the house. She goes through the bedrooms, whether they're occupied or not. It appears that she is housebound. And again, I don't know if that's like in Beetlejuice with the sandworms, or if that was her home and she's just safe and comfortable there. There's no way to legitimately document what that is. Because if you have a psychic that's getting an impression and shares that, then there's going to be somebody that goes, oh, pshaw, right? But if you get EVPs, then there's always going to be someone to discount them. See, that's what I'm talking about earlier. You just cannot throw away the baby with the bathwater. You need to be open-minded and recognize that the average investigator doesn't do this to get famous. The average investigator doesn't do this so that, they've got the bragging rights at the bar. The average person who is investigating the paranormal is driven to do so because of personal experience. You don't go into this thinking, oh, well, I'm just going to write off everything, and anybody who gets something that I don't or that I don't understand is an idiot and a fraud. We know those professional skeptics who, no matter what you bring them, are going to blow you off. That is rude and annoying. And sometimes it's okay to say that, there are things that I may not understand, that I may not be able to explain. But damn, wasn't that interesting? And I always pick on the gentleman Kenny Biddle. And he knows that I like him, so I can do that, I hope. He was talking about Old South Pittsburgh Hospital. I was sharing evidence that I had gotten there. Lori and I had been there. We had all kinds of weird and wacky, cool experiences. And if you haven't been to the Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, why the heck not? Go. It's sitting right there in Tennessee. And it has a sister location in Harriman. So, also an old hospital. Also Ronnie D's. Also a beautifully haunted location, which I'm going to find out soon. But, for myself. But, it's just so frustrating because, bless his heart, I was talking about it. And Kenny finally said, "Do you sell tours for this group? Are you affiliated with this group?" I can't remember his exact terminology. And I said, "No, I just love to investigate there because I always get something." There are those places that you're going to have an experience, and they're not the same for everyone. For whatever reason, that hospital and the spirits within it welcome me. And I'm so appreciative of that fact. It's just, it's a gift. Like I said, if you get evidence through the course of your evening, then you have made a connection. And don't think that happens to just everyone, right? It's annoying when it doesn't and you expect it. But when you expect it, that's when it won't come. I swear they're obstinate sometimes. If they feel like you're going to be, it's almost like they feel taken advantage of because they've given you the gift of a relationship. Maybe that's a good way to put it. But it's really nifty. And Lori said, "Me, her, and Elvis." Yeah. And that's another thing. If you're in a location, especially a location of a certain period, know and download some of the music from that time frame. I mean, different music goes with different eras. If you were in a place that was, that the hauntings ostensibly come from the Civil War period, the Revolutionary War period. If you're in Scotland, if you're wherever you are, have something to trigger relevant to the location or the period of the location. If I were to be given run of a castle in Scotland or, anything, I would be finding out what kind of music was relevant when it was built, what kind of music was relevant to its history, what kind of music the previous owners loved, that kind of thing. And I would see what happened. Because music truly is a universal language. It transcends everything from what I've seen. And I'm very fortunate. I get to investigate with some of the best people on the planet. And they're pretty good investigators too. Har. But it's such an awesome thing to see this. Often, if we're on site, like we were at South Pittsburgh, like we have been at Paulding Jail, like we were at Mansfield Reformatory, like we were when we were in Savannah, although she wasn't using the music then. But, I have seen spirits interact for as long as she'll play the music. They interact with her in response to her. They interact with her by dancing around her. You can see them on the SLS, and that's more than one SLS in the same location. The energy is there. And I think that is so flippin' cool, don't you? I mean, how can you not? When you see this occurring, it blows your mind. It does. And I can understand being skeptical of an SLS having a reaction. Hell, I can even see being skeptical of maybe two of them. But when you have multiple pieces of equipment going off, validating, it's almost like they're interacting, then bingo, baby, you've got it. You better hope that camera's rolling or that tape recorder's on or something. You need to be recording. And that's another thing that I'll say is do not walk into a location without some sort of device rolling with you. I have caught stuff when I very first walked in the gates of Sloss. And then, you sometimes I'll sit there and I'll start getting stuff that I'm noticing, right? And I'm just like, oh, why did I not turn on a recorder when I walked in? Because if a spirit is communicating with you, there's a reason. There is a reason that you are receiving that interaction. They've got better things to do. The people at Sloss are at work. They are working when they are there. And, to me, it's a huge compliment when I realize that I have gotten interaction. I love it. I get so excited. I think that it's just the coolest thing ever. I think that I'm so gifted, not in myself, not by my body's intuition to energy, but because they chose to share that energy. It is so cool. When we went to the Winchester house, I know that's not in Alabama, but I'm still going there. But, we were walking through and Patty Negri did a seance. And my mom came through. My mom. She was recently deceased. And there in the middle of what was a pretty loud group of people, and, everyone was excited. I mean, because the Winchester house, right? Oh my gosh. So it was brilliant because I had gone to the end of the table where Patty was opening the seance, and there was all kinds of stuff, like I said, going on. And I heard my mom. Other people heard her too and didn't know that was my mom. It was so amazing. And I almost lost it. And I will never forget that moment. It was the first time I heard my mom's voice after she died. And she said my name. So I had to take a break. It was something else. And it has happened since, and I've had it on a recorder. So, and it was her voice. Go figure, right? We keep our voices. But there were other things there too. There were animals. People don't seem to realize that animals don't necessarily leave. I recently lost a very good girl. And it was horrible. But I also know that I was her safe spot. I was her safe place. And it's funny because all of my animals are always rescues. I've never had a boutique dog, okay? Whether it's somebody that just knows that, but it's whether somebody, an animal that needs a hand or what's going on, it just seems like it works, right? And it gets interesting. It gets so interesting. And, I had one dog that we were her fourth home. I was her safe place. She had almost just had a terrible, terrible time. And it was devastating when she passed away, because it was just a terrible, terrible passing. And it was pretty much a given that if there was going to be an animal that might come back, it would be her. Well, she did. I was walking in from outside, and she was walking down the hall and walked into the kitchen. And she was not obvious, right? But she wasn't the full white, but she was there. And that took me by surprise, because I had no idea that that was a thing that could happen. And it was pretty dadgum cool, if I have to say so myself. But you get those gifts, right? You just do. And I'm going to just say that we've got about 4 minutes left, because I'm not going to be able to do 2 hours, and I apologize for that. But it's such a neat thing when you get out there investigating. Come south. We've got all these beautiful locations. The Pensacola Lighthouse is a fantastic place. You go farther south. Any of the lighthouses that you can get to are not going to let you down. I'm just saying. I have never had anything make me feel like A, I was in its way, or B, like, it just couldn't be bothered. Always a good experience. And it's pretty okay. Don't be scared. We have stuff here too. So come down, come play. We're having all kinds of stuff happening here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. I had communication. I'm having lunch with Mark tomorrow. I'm so excited for that. But Mark's show tomorrow night is going to be on Haunted Florida. And, he has books out, Chattanooga Chills, about where he grew up, where he was murdered, and where he came back. If you have not listened to Mark Fultz's show, it comes on Thursday nights at 7 Central, and it's worth a listen. Last week's got a little saucy. I think Spreaker pulled it, but it is what it is. I have a recording. I can let you listen to that if you need to learn about, transitionalism in the trans community. So I don't know why they would have pulled it. He does get saucy every so often, but he promises a Disneyland, Disney rated episode this week. And I really don't care. I think he does brilliant work. He can do what he wants to. So, but he went looking for that show to share, and it appears to have disappeared. But anyway, I will see you next week. Same cat time, same cat channel. And, if you are wanting to have some what's the word? Good heavens. If you're wanting to affect the world around you, you can do that every day of your life, every minute of your life. You can be the change. It's an absolute thing. And thank you, Lori. Love you too. She said it was a fun show. I hope it was. I hope I didn't just bore y'all to tears. This is not something I do a lot. Well, maybe you get bored a lot, but I don't do a solo a lot. So, anyway, I will, like I said, I'll see you next time, and check out Hangout Fest. We've got some good music coming here. I'm going to be there, or plan to. So, until then, I'll see ya, and take care. Make that eye contact. Manifest some change, positive change around you. We can all do that. We should all do that. You be the change you want to see. You'll affect the whole daggum world. Guaranteed. But meanwhile, I must say goodnight. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.